Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to How to Raise a Happy Mother with me, Abdullah. And we are on Stream Islam. We're streaming on all IDC platforms. So I believe that's Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can watch there and please get in touch and interact as well. So as I said, this is a new show we're doing this year. It's usually how to raise a happy child, but we're focusing on the mother this year. And I'm Abdullah. I'm a new mother of a 10-month-old, alhamdulillah, just trying to navigate my way through motherhood. And over the next month, we'll be discussing a variety of different topics from physical health, mental health, and spiritual health, which we'll be discussing today, and how to maintain all of those while juggling motherhood and everything else that comes with a newborn, inshallah. Today I've got my dear friend Mariam with me.
Assalamualaikum, Mariam.
And Walaikum salam. And you have a 2-year-old, don't you? Allah
Yes,
Mabarak.
yes, I do. Alhamdulillah.
So you're one step further than me. So inshallah
You can say that.
Allah Mabarak. So you can share some of your experiences, inshallah. So as I said, we're going to cover a variety of different topics. Today, I think with us just entering this blessed month, we thought we'd start off strong and discuss how to maintain our spiritual health and our Iman in and outside of Ramadan, one after having a new baby, and how in fact having a newborn can get you closer to Allah, inshallah. Because usually, I know in my experience, in most experiences, it's the other way around and you feel a bit of a disconnect. But inshallah, I will be sharing some tips, beneficial to me as well, advice to myself as well, that should hopefully help us get the most out of the month. So yes, I'm producing today is Sister Sarah as well. So we have a whole new setup today. Me and Mariam, for OG listeners, we've done a few shows in the past, haven't we?
We have.
Alhamdulillah. But we came today a little bit. Well, I know I came a little bit. Thought it'd be a bit of a familiar environment, but it is all new and fancy. Allah Mabarak. So bear with us, please, if we are a bit slow on the technology front. But yes, as I said, do interact. Get in touch on those platforms: Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Was it? Yeah. Yes. So get in touch and share your experiences as well, inshallah. So I think as women we experience numerous changes throughout our lives, but one of the most significant is that of motherhood. Like one minute you're living your regular life, and then you're responsible for a whole other new human being. And it's really, I had lots of friends that had children, and I'm the eldest of like 5 siblings. So you think that you have an idea, but you really don't fathom it until you experience it yourself. Sleepless nights, fatigue, the emotions, the hormones, and the complete disruption of like your routine. Like it literally just goes on its head. So, and that's just
I think a lot of mothers can relate to that, and are probably like mothers of not just new first-time mums, but like mums who are like mums to multiple children.
Yes.
It probably just doesn't stop, does it? The worry, the anxiety, and the sleepless nights.
And every child is different. So even if you've had one, the next child could just be a completely different challenge. And then there's also the challenge of having multiple as well. That's why there's a reason Allah refers to this period in the Quran as weakness upon weakness, or hardship upon hardship. I think it's in Surah Luqman, and that's the era between pregnancy and breastfeeding. And it says, and we have enjoined upon man for his parents, his mother carried him in weakness upon weakness, and his weaning is in 2 years. Be grateful to me and to your parents. To me is the destination. And that's Surah Luqman, ayah 14, I believe. And the word comes from the root word, let me check my notes, Waw Ha Noon, which means weak and feeble. And Allah doesn't call this time period just wahan, if I've pronounced it right. It's weakness or just weakness. It's weakness upon weakness, hardship upon hardship, and all the above things layered in double. So next time someone brushes off your hardships, sometimes people say, "Oh, all women do it. Women are built for this." Have you heard that?
Oh, that's too many times.
Yeah. Oh, that's why mothers have 3 times better rank. Know that in your heart that the Lord of the worlds accept it as hard. Allah has said it's hard, and not just hard, really, really hard. So
That reminds me, I'm not sure if it's a hadith, so correct me if I'm wrong. And Sarah, chip in if you like know the hadith as well. But is there a hadith about a man who carried his mother on his back doing Hajj, and he
yeah,
did the whole Hajj carrying his like elderly, frail mother on his back, and it was said to him that this doesn't even make up for like 1 ounce of pain that she went through. I'm paraphrasing here, so
I
don't
can't
quote
think of
me.
the reference, but I have
But
heard the
it doesn't
hadith.
make up for like the one, tear or 1 ounce of pain that she went through carrying you, i.e., the burden of like she carrying you in her womb.
Mm.
So this is like that reminds me what you've just described, the hardship upon hardship or weakness upon weakness. About that hadith or quote there.
Yeah, subhanallah. So it's true. So I think that's uh, such an important
Mm.
point that we need to remember that Allah has recognized that even if other people don't.
Yeah, and yeah. Oh, okay.
Ah, Jazakallah.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
Jazakallah
what
khair.
was the reference? Can you just say that out loud? Oh, okay. You got an Arabic. Not a native Arabic speaker, unfortunately.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But if you can
Oh,
give the
actually, can
reference,
you post the reference for anyone who's listening,
I was
just in
gonna
case,
say
on the page in front of us?
yes.
That'll be good because then that way I can refer back to it later as well. But I
Jazakallah.
just wanted to say that point you made earlier as well. Do you know how you hear that phrase? Oh, every mother goes through this. It
Yes.
doesn't mean, and it's the most natural thing in the world. You might hear that sometimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's necessarily the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, have you heard
Like,
something similar? Like our mothers went through it,
oh
and they
yeah,
had like far, fewer resources and
it actually
gadgets
reminds
and gizmos.
that reminds me of one more thing. Do you know when your parents generally say, like when they try and encourage you to go to school,
Yeah.
I had to walk 20 miles to get
Yes, in the
skirts.
snow, this deep,
Yeah.
the snow. It's very, very similar to what they say.
Yeah.
And of course, becoming a mother does bring unimaginable amount of joy. Oh,
Mm.
I'm thinking of Abdullah. And Allahumma barik. And joy and happiness and love. That's a given. Excuse me. But in this show, we want to focus on the relationship between a mother and Allah, which most of the time for ourselves and for our dearest sisters takes a hit.
Mm.
And this is further weakened in cases where sisters may suffer from like postnatal depression and things like that. And that's something, inshallah, we're going to cover in future weeks as well. So that's something to listen out for. And every mother, I know I did, receives a lot of advice from well wishers, like make sure you freeze multiple meals. Have you did you hear that one?
Yeah, that was
Like batch cook, or you won't have time to cook, and we all try to stay on top of things, like get things organized, get your nesting sorted, get your organizing sorted, and we try to do everything possible to ensure our baby feels safe and welcome. However, one thing most mothers don't worry too much about is how to take care of themselves.
Mm.
I think that's I know with my mum and mums that I know, and now I'm mum myself, I experienced it unfortunately after becoming a new mother. Self-care and looking after themselves, particularly in the case of Iman, um, kind of gets left behind,
Mm.
unfortunately. Um, and it's not the same as it was before motherhood. So yeah. So anything else you'd like to chip in with
No, well,
regards to just
there's so much that I could say, but like, where do you start? Because I
that's
think a
it.
lot of new mums it can relate to pretty much everything that you're saying there.
Yeah.
Particularly about the self care after giving birth, because have you had that phrase before? Like, it takes a village to raise a child, but
Yes.
we don't live in this metaphorical sense of a village. We don't live in a communities we're encouraged in this day and age, unfortunately, to sort of like live as couples and partners. Obviously,
Yes.
husband and wife needs their space.
Yes.
However, when it comes to like rearing children or raising them up, back in the olden days,
Yes.
you'd often have generations of people or family members living together. You'd have aunties and uncles in the house. You have brothers and sisters. Everyone would be chipping in. So as a mother, as a new mother, you wouldn't feel particularly alone or isolated. You might still feel that,
Yeah.
but you're not left alone to look after your
Well,
child
it's
on its own.
really funny you should say that
But now
because
we
it's
are, unfortunately. Yeah.
exactly. And I had a very similar conversation when I was pregnant,
Mm.
with somebody, and we were talking about, well, how did our mothers do it?
Mm.
Like, surely they managed, like, as I said before, with
Mm.
far fewer resources and things. And how did they do it without complaining and going through? I remember somebody saying, quite not very appropriate and a bit insensitive, but oh, nah, they did say it with hikmah. But so I'm just kind of just paraphrasing, but oh, like postnatal depression, our mothers didn't seem to have it, and things like that. And it
Did
wasn't,
someone actually say that to you?
yeah. well, they didn't say about postnatal depression. I should but the anxieties that come
Yeah, like
along, the
the
anxieties,
blues,
the
yeah.
blues. So not to that level, but the
Yeah.
blues. And I did think about it. I was like, huh, our mums did do a lot, and I didn't. And I asked around a few people and shared this conversation. They said exactly what you said. It's because back in the day, with a lot of, especially from our background, Pakistani background, you live in joint families.
Mhm.
So you'd have mother-in-law, sister-in-laws, other people around the house. So if you needed to go to the bathroom, or if you needed to get, like, cup of tea or whatever, there'd be someone there to hold the baby. And I hadn't clicked until I'd asked, and I was like, oh, because I did think, huh, that's a good point, like, how did they do it? Like,
Well, I don't know if that's it. Do you know the comment that you said at the beginning, like, oh, our mother, the person that said that to you, our mother didn't have, the blues.
yeah.
Maybe they did. They just didn't speak about
Well,
it.
I did mention that as
Isn't
well.
it?
I did mention that
Yeah.
with regards to the blues, but when they were talking about general, like, smaller anxieties and just managing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good point because, like you said, at that point in time, they still had people around. They didn't.
Exactly.
Like today, people are, as soon as they fly the nest as children, who then get married, they don't even just like no longer live in the same city as their parents. They're moving
Exactly.
abroad. They're moving away up and down the country. So fair enough, you've got your life to live and your job opportunities and you're
Yeah.
doing all of that. But then when it
Don't
comes
have your
to
village.
exactly, so there's no
Yeah.
village, and that's why I believe that you've got higher levels of like depression setting in after giving birth, etc.
100%.
Which is why it's more of a problem now than it was back then.
And even back then, on a smaller level, the amount of times he kept on in
My
the
apologies.
hospital, I can't remember how long it was, but I know from just talking to my mum, you were in hospital a lot longer. Here nowadays, you have the baby, and literally, unless there's any like complication, you're like literally out
In
the
and
door.
out,
And back in
revolving
the
door.
day, like I said, don't quote me, but I know that you were there a lot longer. So even that, having that time and having the nurses there to look after you, to look after the baby, was, it must have been such a help.
And it's an adjustment period as well, actually, because what you'll also find is that compared to back then and now, you've got a lot of mums who are struggling to breastfeed because they don't have the support. But a lot of
100%.
mums want to, and I know that so many mothers that I've spoken to, I've had different conversations. The amount of mothers that wanted to, they didn't get the support. They were, I remember speaking to a couple of mothers that were told by their hospital staff wherever they gave birth, oh, what, why breastfeed? Just give them a bottle. Those types of comments, and it can really, really bring you down as a new mum in particular, and that's not what you need. That's not what you want to hear.
No.
So it's vital more than ever that having that support network, not just from a family, but also your society and like from a hospital level as well.
Yeah.
Is crucial in supporting the new mother to raise the child the best way that they can.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is for this portion of the introduction. I think that's probably one of the best takeaways, having a tribe, because I know Mariam, excuse me, I got a cough. You live local. I haven't moved too far away, alhamdulillah. So my family can still visit me, but they're not around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I can't just. I would just imagine
like
my
knocking the
sister
door,
lived
like,
there.
woo, yeah.
I need to have a shower, or I need to go to
Yeah.
the bathroom. And I keep mentioning that, but those are the biggest problems.
Exactly.
I've got nowhere to put the baby. So yeah, so it's definitely difficult. But we will get to that as well, because another little kind of spoiler for future shows is we are going to discuss relationships, just it's how to maintain relationships, but also finding your tribe. And that's something that I know for me, not having my family like around the corner, was just, it just made the night and day difference when I found that.
They're a crutch you need at that point. Have you heard the phrase like, oh, sometimes people use other people as crutches to lean on in a negative sense, but after giving birth, it's something that you actually need to support you.
100%.
So and then you realize it's one of those times where you don't realize what you haven't lost your family, in that sense, but you don't realize what you've lost until you no longer have them there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I thought I'd settled in rather well into the community, but when you have a child, it's just
that's when you sort of
you feel it. But again, in future shows to come. So I thought we'd start off almost at the beginning, and we're talking about how to maintain your iman. And I think the biggest hit, one of the biggest kickers, is the nifas, the postnatal bleeding period. And that was really hard for me, because you do feel like, even if you have when you have your menses and you have your period, that's what, like up to like 7 days. It's not that much, but 40 days, up to 40 days, is just so long without praying salah and having that connection. And I think even I mean, even if you could, the exhaustion is something else which we'll get
Mm.
to. But yeah, after the nifas period, I was hoping to get right back into it. You're thinking to yourself, like, okay, I'm not praying because I can't pray.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that even when you are allowed to pray, there are so many other factors which
Mm.
kind of make it so difficult for you. And so yeah, I think that was really, really tricky for
Can I
me.
ask, is anything for you in particular that struck out for your nifas period where, on a spiritual level, you either missed or you felt grateful for that Allah gave you that excuse?
You know what?
So anything like a positive or negative that you want to sort of share with
You
people?
know, it's I'm doing this show and I'm supposed to be revisiting it, and it's remember Abdullah's only 10 months, but I feel like I can't remember anything. When on the brain does shrink. I did some research into
Brain
what they
fog,
call
yeah.
baby brain, and I definitely have that brain fog is still real. I think for me, it was definitely Salah.
Mm.
You base your whole routine around
Mm.
Salah, your timetable. You know, there's loads of like optional deeds that you like to do, but the obligatory ones are the ones that you know you can always rely on. Like
Hmm.
even if you don't do your Monday fast or
Yeah.
whatever it may be, and I think not having that Salah just turned everything upside down. Like your
Mm.
routine is already all over the place anyway with a newborn, but if you were able to rely on your Salah, you would think that would kind of give you a bit of structure.
Yes,
And for me,
yeah.
I like routine and structure. I need that. And so not having that was a big thing. But to be honest, it's all a blur if you're asking me right now. The Salah's the most prominent thing I can
Yes.
remember. What about yourself? Like give me a second to think.
For
Let me go
me,
through
it
everything.
was the Salah, but we were just discussing briefly. For me, I was so eager to pray in the first 6 weeks, but that was like obviously postnatal bleeding can last for those like 40, 42 days. I was so eager to pray, but then I realized that after the 40-day period had elapsed, it was actually harder to get it back into that, not just back into the routine, but um not just back into the routine, but back into your obedience of Allah, because it comes in so many different forms, and not just about raising your child the right way, but making sure that you're doing justice by yourself, making
Yeah.
sure that you keeping yourself spiritually I don't want to use the phrase.
Nourished.
I was going to say spiritually moist, but nourished is better. That is a better phrase, I reckon.
Yeah.
um and that's when I found the real testing period began. You know, not not being too exhausted, but being exhausted nevertheless while praying. And then you end up feeling guilty a little bit, because you're just like you're trying to pray, but then the baby's crying and you're like this. And it's just, but obviously I think a lot of mothers can relate to that. And I think coming back to that point, making sure that you're building up your relationships and you're nourishing those relationships with people that are going to support you in the time when it really matters most is vital. Because inshallah, if you ever have any future babies, you know now what you want to avoid for the next time, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah.
And that's a learning curve. Being a
Yeah.
mother and how to navigate that is a learning curve in itself.
Yeah. And though the show is on motherhood, and if we had more time, I would have loved to have kind of expanded into about pregnancy as well. Um, a lot of a lot of people gave me the same advice, which was um try and really, really strengthen your iman, build up your knowledge
Mm.
during pregnancy. So because these are like these sisters already had children. So they obviously had the experience and
Mm.
they knew the hit that was about to come.
Yes.
So they encouraged me like during pregnancy, this is your time like to really, really lock in those habits, get that knowledge and everything. So
Doesn't that
um
remind you of that hadith about five, take advantage of five before five? And
yes,
one of them is
yes.
take advantage of your time before your preoccupation. And
Mm,
obviously, children are, we've only got one child each, but it's
yeah,
like a
alhamdulillah.
preoccupation in itself. So imagine those mums who have got multiple children.
Can't
It
even
really does
imagine.
suck your energy out, doesn't it?
Literally,
And
I
now,
mean, physically as well. Like
yes,
even through
yeah,
pregnancy, they suck everything out of you. I don't know how much. There was a fact. How many what percentage of your like whole body
yes.
that the baby takes.
Exactly.
Um,
I can't remember either,
yeah.
but it makes you appreciate or not want to take for granted the time that Allah gives you, prior to being occupied with children.
I say this to a
Because
lot of my like family and friends
yeah,
that don't have kids. I'm like, I know people used to say it to me, but I really didn't like appreciate
it
it. But
doesn't
I'm
click, does it?
telling you
Yeah.
now, I'm like, it's gonna take over your whole life. And as I said in the introduction, you can't fathom it. You literally, unfortunately, can't. you don't know to what extent it takes over your life until you have the child.
Yes.
But to all those people that are listening that perhaps are not at that point yet, really, really make the most of it, because
it's important that, yeah, because the things that you wanted to do in terms of your Islam, your Iman, and nurturing your level of knowledge, reading books, seeking that knowledge, going to classes, you can't take that time for granted, uh, until you, and then you won't know that you've taken it for granted until something else comes along major, where your responsibilities have now shifted to being in charge of another human being like that.
yeah,
So that's the advice that I would give to like friends who are looking to have children, etc. See what you can do now before having a child comes along.
definitely. And you mentioned advice. I think now the next portion of the show, now we've painted a very colourful picture of the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is just actually, before I go on to the next point, we have painted it very, like, me and Miriam have both had very rough nights with our children.
Yeah,
So I think that's why we're in this bit of a bit of a mood, but it is beautiful. Like
sleepless nights plus fasting, excellent combination.
but the joy that they bring,
Yeah,
subhanallah, alhamdulillah, is just, yes. And so we'll go to the comments now as well. So this is what I mentioned earlier about having a different setup. So Sister Sarah is going to explain to us where the comments are. So is it just this one, or do we have more? You're going to put them on bit by bit. Oh, okay. So we've got Jenna Dean, Jazakallah khair, sister, for messaging in. The title doesn't make sense, Raising a Mother. It's meant to be like a play on words, because it used to be like all the books. It's based on a book actually by the same name. That's where I took it from. And a lot of the parenting books are how to raise a happier child.
yes.
And the focus is always on the child. But in this show, we wanted to play on word, but we wanted to focus more on the mother. So even the books that you read, the shows that you listen to, it's always on, which is good and also beneficial to like learn about how to raise a happier child. But I feel like there's not enough out there, which is why I chose a topic about how to look after yourself as a mother,
And
particularly Islamically. So
just want to say I'm so glad you have chosen the topic, because there is so much out there about raising children. And I like it. I like the fact that you've called it How to Raise a Mother, because this appeals particularly to new mums. I would say
Yeah.
this show. Like we said, that we're navigating a massive learning curve, and when you think about it, the way children are when they're quite young, it is often a reflection of how the parents are, in particular the mother, because children, no matter what the circumstances the mother and father are in, the child is usually really attached to the mother up until about the age of 7. And after that, then they'll start wanting to form more of a strong attachment with the dads. I'm not saying that's not going to happen before, but this is generally the way that life sort of plays out for the child, is that whether it's a boy or a girl that you've got, it's always the mother that they're really attached to up until the age of 7. So if the mother is in a certain, feeling a certain way, and she's happy, and she's like, self-care, and she's doing all of that, and she's looking after herself mentally, spiritually, physically, etc., then usually that's going to reflect on how the child is being raised from 0 to 7 years old.
That's fantastic.
So it is actually tantamount and paramount that we have a show that discusses how to raise a mother into being the best mother she can be.
Alhamdulillah.
Kudos to you.
Jazakallah khair. And that's a fantastic point you made, because that doesn't just start from when they're born, but from pregnancy, they say. And I've seen it myself. However anxious the mother is, and how she takes care of herself in pregnancy is a reflection.
It is.
Of how the child is. And I've seen quite anxious mothers that are quite anxious in nature.
Yes.
And their children, unfortunately, inherit that. Whereas I'm not saying that pregnancy is easier, and some is easier than others, of course. But the ones that generally have quite a calmer temperament, you see it reflected in the children as well.
It's true. It's because like the amount of cortisol, so the stress hormone a woman has in her body, that can have an effect on what essentially the child is going to inherit in terms of what's programmed into their DNA.
Yes.
So this is why, like, trying to stress this to your it's funny I'm using that term stress, but trying to stress this to your closest family members. Do not make me angry, right?
Yes.
When you're pregnant, it's actually really, really important, because it's going to affect the ongoing pregnancy of your child up until they're born.
Massively so, along with other effects too, the labor as well.
So,
but yes,
are there any other comments, by the way?
So I was just going to say, we're going to go on to our next comment. Quantum resistant. Is that just me with my baby brain and Ramadan brain, or do you understand that?
I don't know what this person means. Oh, So Gianluca Zazari, if you can kindly
Elaborate.
elaborate on that, that would be really
We'll
good.
get back to you,
Yes.
inshallah. A cup of tea from the bathroom.
From the bathroom. Okay.
You know, oh, they think that's what we said. No, a cup of tea or going to the bathroom.
Yes.
That's what we meant. So a lot of corrections here. Anybody who's actually commented and with their experiences. Oh, Shabida's me. I wonder who that is. I remember when we were born, the babies used to stay in the nursery and the nurses used to look after the mother and baby for a whole week.
Wow.
There you go. You weren't just in Jazakallah khair for that comment. That's very, very good comment. So not only were you in hospital and looked after, your baby was taken away and looked after. So you were completely by yourself. I've seen places actually, I think it's in Korea, correct me if I'm wrong if anybody's listening, where they have like special hotels for mum.
Is it? I think it's Japan or
Is it
Korea.
Japan? Yeah.
I remember seeing this. I remember reading about
I
this.
was
Yeah.
absolutely astounded. Like literally, they go, they have all their meals cooked for them. Jazakallah khair. That's probably a good idea. They have all their meals cooked for them. The baby's like literally taken away the whole time, or is only brought back for feeding if they're breastfeeding. And it's not just like the fact that you're being looked after and the baby's being looked after. It's very fancy. Like a really, really nice hotel setup. And I was like thinking to myself, gap in the market here. Like, can you imagine? So yeah. So thank you for that comment, Jazakallah khair. That was Shabi Dazimir, Mariam. Any other comments?
You and the Muslim mum should collaborate.
Oh, who's the Muslim mum?
No,
Let us know who the Muslim mum is. And, we love connecting with people, so that would be good, inshallah. We need to have a show on how to raise a happier dad. We definitely do, but I can't do that because I'm a mum. So if you know any happy dads out there that are happy to do the show, then go for it, inshallah. It's a good idea. Right, my children are grown and should not be raising me. Right, my children are grown and should not be raised. My apologies.
Okay, I think
I'm not quite sure.
So Gina Dean, I think let's just clarify one more time. The name of the show is about how other people, not the children of the mother, how other people that should be supporting the mother can raise a happier mum. How can they nurture the mum's happiness
and
so
how
that,
to
so
be
that she can raise her children the right way? It's not about how her own children can make her happier.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I hope that
understand.
clarifies it because I think that's
It's basically how to be a happier mum. That is the play on words clearly didn't work. But okay. Inshallah, Mariam's explained, and I hope you understand. Inshallah. Any other comments? That's it. So yes, you can comment on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We should be streaming live on all IDC platforms. So yeah, how to raise a happier mum. Sarah spelt it the American way. MOM. It's MUM. Should be the Zamir just posted Abu Inaya. Oh, Abu Inaya can do a show on how to raise a happier dad.
Yes. Inshallah, that's a good
Yes,
idea.
that is a fantastic idea. I don't think he'll be listening, but we'll definitely pass that message on, perhaps for next year. Abu Inaya is the uncle of Abdullah. So yes.
So Gina Dean has put, "You're making me think of getting a Halima to breastfeed. #happier."
Oh, someone else to breastfeed their child.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for that comment. That would be a lot easier.
Yes.
Just to be able to have like somebody else to feed your child. We had different experiences because
Yes.
you went, if you don't mind me sharing,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
went
of
through the
course.
breastfeeding journey, and I tried and tried. I had we got a lactation specialist. We got all the equipment from the hospital. We got all the different equipment from the house. And unfortunately for some women, it doesn't come. And I did feel incredibly guilty. There's a lot of stress at the time because there's a pressure that not just from other people, but that you put on yourself as well. But sometimes, sisters, it just doesn't come. How hard you try.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Like what I was saying earlier. Do you know how people use that phrase often? Just because something's natural doesn't mean it's easy. And breastfeeding is probably the number one most prime example of it. Just because it's the most natural thing in the world, because Allah has designed us that way, it doesn't mean it comes easy.
And it's stressful if you
women.
do, and it's stressful if you don't.
Exactly, because women get slack all over the place about when it comes to breastfeeding, because there's always other people going to comment about how you should do it, how long you should do it, are you doing it right? Because I know
Yeah.
from my perspective, like for example, for the viewers that don't know, my in-laws are not Muslim, so when they hear about, as a Muslim mum, breast aiming to breastfeed your child up to 2 years old, they think that's weird because after 1 years old, they don't see it as a baby anymore.
Yeah.
But obviously, we know from Islam that the right of the child is to have the right of the mum's milk up
Milk.
until two.
Hmm.
So they just couldn't get their head around that idea. But I
Yeah.
think that's quite inherent in a lot of not just non-Muslim but Muslim communities.
For
So that was
sure.
quite hard for me to digest. Is that I had a plan, but then I had other people criticizing that,
Yeah.
and it does bring you down on your breastfeeding journey.
Yeah.
And like just like yourself and other women and other mothers that I know, the amount of times where they needed the support, they wanted the support, they just didn't know who to call, they didn't know who to turn to, and when they did, sometimes they were just met with like, well, what's the point? That attitude. So it doesn't help.
And
But
I must
mm,
admit, I was so blessed, alhamdulillah, that I had a fantastic service around me, like
mm,
where I had Abdullah compared to speaking to my friends who had their children in other hospitals
mm,
in other areas of the country. It was just so different their
mm,
experiences, and I was really, really blessed because, like I said, they were very, very supportive of the breastfeeding journey, very
mm,
encouraging. The whole service down to my midwife was very pro breastfeeding.
mm,
So I was kind of in that very, very pro breastfeeding
mm,
environment, with from the hospital to the midwife
mm.
to the doctor staff. So I did get full
Yeah.
support.
And it just
And
goes
even
to,
then it was still
exactly, and
difficult.
it just goes to show that even when you get the support, it doesn't always work out the way you want because it's like qadr of Allah,
That's it.
isn't it? Like where whatever reason, well, for whatever reasons, things don't always work out the way you want them to.
That's it. And
So
even though I had that support, even mentally, it was still
it
so,
is.
so
It
stressful.
is.
Oh, subhanallah, that was just
Allah
Allah.
reward you so much
I
for
was just about to say the same
everything.
to you. I was like,
I
Allah
mean,
reward you for your journey. But
I
I
mean,
mean, but yeah, alhamdulillah. But anyway, the next part of the show, we're going to inshallah share tips. Um, and this advice is for myself as well as everybody else watching and listening. Because I feel like I'm still, I feel like he was just born yesterday. I feel like he's
yes.
still a newborn. I
I
can't
feel like
believe it.
I feel like I've just blinked in. He was born into your son. When you
Yeah.
said he was 10 months old, I was like,
When
wow,
he's, I know it's a bit
subhanallah,
silly when you say 10 months old, it hits hard. But when you say he's 2 months away from a year,
one
inshallah,
scary.
yeah, it is. Allah give all our children goodness.
I mean,
But yeah, so we're going to go and inshallah share some advice.
yes,
So I've got a few here. And the first one is being the early bird. And Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Oh Allah, bless my nation in their early mornings, i.e., what they do in the early morning." So waking up. Okay, again, all this advice is advice for me, and I know that I'm saying it, but I know it's easier said than done. But just inshallah, I'm still sharing it because it may benefit somebody.
mm,
Um, but getting up early in the morning, you're up anyway. So things like the hajjud. I know that when Abdullah's feed kind of fell at the hajjud time, it was easier because you're like, oh, you're up anyway. You go to the bathroom, you do wudu in preparation for fajr. So making the most of those blessed early hours, I think, if you can. I know, like, again, it's so hard and you're so exhausted.
mm.
And even getting up to feed and change them is just like probably the most you can do. But making the most of that time if you can, I think is
Can I just add
beneficial.
something?
Yes, please.
Because I've just realised something Maureen, that you've said. Do you know, as you're like speaking,
Yeah.
I've just been processing what you say. It
Uh-huh.
looks like I'm just like zoning out, but I'm not trying. I am processing it.
I know you well enough. I can see the cogs
I've
whirring,
just
mashallah.
just realised something,
Mm.
do you know, like when no matter like how old your child is in the first couple of years, what you've
Mm-hmm.
just said is so important because like as a mum and as a wife, as a homemaker, whatever you are, if you're working on top of all of that as well, subhanallah, sometimes you can just let things slide. If you or if you can't get that room tidied, if you can't get this hoovered or the dishes done, sometimes you can just let these things be compromised. But one thing that I wish I was stronger in, and that wish I'd nurtured better, was not is setting boundaries for myself and not allowing myself to compromise certain things.
Mm.
Like, when that exhaustion hits you,
Yes.
like when, because I think we were talking about spiritual dips and spiritual laws when it comes
Yes.
unless we're going to come to that in a bit more depth. I'm not sure, but
No, go for it. That's the whole
it's
topic of
like
the show.
when you're hitting a spiritual low or a spiritual like hit in your iman because of that pure tiredness, you know, because as mums we're naturally the ones who are the go-to for when the baby wakes up during the night, etc., regardless whether you bottle or breastfeeding. It's always, you know, the mum who normally takes on that burden anyways. um I realized that setting boundaries and setting something that's uncompromisable would have probably been the next thing that I would do if I was to have another child. Is that I'm not going to let this come. Salah is not compromisable, anyways. I'm not saying that it was to begin with,
I know what you
but
mean.
when it comes to having a child, it's like no matter what, you're gonna do that as a, you know, bare minimum, and you know the dishes, the, you know, hoovering, whatever, all of those can
Yeah,
wait. You know,
yeah,
other things on your, you know, never ending to do list, they can wait, but you know your obedience to your creator shouldn't. And I've
100%.
just realized that
Mashallah.
when you said that, the way you said it, that just made me click. Like,
Subhanallah.
look, why? Why did that not make sense to you before?
Because you know
So
why I
thank you for
didn't.
that as well,
Oh
Mariam.
no, that thank you for that excellent point. And you know what it is? You were talking about exhaustion, but it's not just exhaustion. Remember, you are ill. You're poorly.
Mm.
You like you have a massive, not to be graphic, wound.
Mhm.
And that's just generally speaking. You know, there's all sorts of other things that happen in labor and delivery
Mm.
that essentially like injure you. I don't know if that's like the
No,
medical
it is.
term,
It
but
is. It's
it
right.
does
Yeah.
injure you. So you're not just exhausted, you are wounded. Then your hormones and your chemistry is just completely
Mm.
altered, your hormones and everything. So people do think, and I know we've talked throughout the show about exhaustion, but it's much more than that. And it's much more, how do I articulate? And people don't understand that
Mm.
essentially. They just think, oh, like if you know, maybe your partner or other people in the
Mm.
family that haven't had children, or maybe you've forgotten. You know, a lot of the older generation, they seem to, if you forget, is a hikmah in it, I guess.
Yes.
Allah
Yeah.
makes you forget, but and they just think, oh, you're tired, you know, have a rest, have a nap. But it's not just that. I remember,
It's not. It's not enough.
it's
Yeah.
just the yeah, it's just it's so much more than that. And yeah, no, that's definitely true. I was going to say something I can't remember, but exactly I have for that point. um you were saying about, oh, that's what I remember what I was going to say, sorry, about tidying. Somebody, so I was out with Abdullah, and he'd got food on himself, or maybe I got food on him. That's probably more likely. And somebody said to me, and I've heard this a lot of times, or I think I heard it from somebody and I said it to them. I was like, "Oh, a messy child is a happy child,"
Oh
and the
yeah.
other
Yeah.
sister said to me, "Yes, and a messy house is a happy house."
Oh,
And I was
yeah.
like, "Mashallah,
Yeah. I've heard
sister."
that one. I've heard that
I've
one.
not heard that one, and I was like, that made me feel so much better
Yeah.
because everybody I speak to, they say the same, like, you know, a messy house is a happy house, and it's
Yeah.
impossible.
Exactly.
I have not yet been into a house of a new mother where it's like immaculate or tidy.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that mine is like truly awful, but I don't know how people do it. So when I hear about other people saying that, and you said about tidying up on the dishes,
Yeah.
it makes me feel so much better about myself.
Yeah, it's because it's like at the end of the day, they're always going to be there, but your time to worship Allah is not always going to be there.
Our situation's a bit different as well. So I live in a joint family, and you live on your own. But on the show, we'll be talking about, in the episode that we're talking about relationships, we'll be talking about that, inshallah, relationships with your spouse, with your in-laws, with your friends, setting boundaries. So that's something that we'll inshallah touch upon again. So yeah, we'll keep that point for there. But yeah, being an early bird, so making the most of the mornings. I know, again, for me, I'm giving this advice, but I was just completely just gone. Like I literally like I was so I was actually doing things with my eyes closed. Like when I was walking to get the milk, I know I physically couldn't see what I was doing. I was so tired. And I'm a girl that likes to get like, I'm a grandma. And Miriam knows I like to go to bed, depending on Isha, 9, 10 o'clock, or as soon as Isha is done, and sleep like good like 8, 10 hours. So for me, everything else was hard, but the sleep. I know everybody says that, but it was
Yes.
just, it was such a dramatic change. So, I mean, if you can make the most, and there were a few times where I did, you know, catch the tahajjud,
Mm.
or you know, was awake and conscious and had some sort of like mental capacity to do some like dhikr or adkar. Um, but I think for those that find that they do have the capacity, or I know some parents, their children sleep through the night, like.
Yes, yeah.
very early on. I don't know what was your experiences in the morning like for this tip, being an early bird and making the most of that part of the night. How does that apply to your experiences? Like I said, for me, I tried, but I
Yeah.
was I was gone.
Do you know what? I'm the opposite of you in terms of like, well, obviously, as you know, in terms of like
Yeah.
timekeeping and things, right? So for those of you that don't know, Abdullah, she's really like, if you're not on time, that's it. That's it. You're out of the picture, right? Whereas me, I'm just like, I'll be there at some point, okay?
Mashallah.
So, taking the fact that you could have a sleep in before having children, you just take it for granted. Like you can just have a snooze and you got less responsibility in that sense. But after that, making that adjustment, it's the what's it called, the physical or the mental adjustment of being sleep deprived and still having to
Yes.
work through the sleeping, the crying, the nappy changes, and obviously all of them and other issues in life. um but what I would say that has helped me is, do you know when you feel like your, I don't know if temper is the right word, but like when your fuse is feeling really short,
Mhm.
is I give myself perspective from other people's other parents. So
Mhm.
do you know other parents when you see them who are like elderly, a bit more older, and all their
Yes.
children have flew the nest, they've got kids and they've all moved out and they're on their own. Like my own mum, for example, like
Yeah.
I'm one of 5 children, and we don't live at home anymore. We're all with our own lives. It makes me think that even though yes, I've only got one child and I'm sleep deprived and I'm tired, etc., everything that I could keep saying forever, it would just me. I just think about my daughter being 20 years old or whatever, not there being there with me. And I think about myself 20 years in the future if I'm, alive still, by the grace of Allah.
And like give you a long life
I
full of
mean,
goodness. I mean,
I mean, and you as well.
I
I
mean,
mean, I just think about myself 20 years in the future, looking back at myself now, thinking, oh, I wish I had more time to hug my daughter. I wish I had more. I wish she was crying in my arms one more time because I could comfort her. But instead, I then think about her being off doing her own life at 20, 21 years old. And I'm just sitting there by myself at home thinking about her. And I think about thinking about that, if that makes sense.
I'm not
How
crying. You're crying.
I think about not wanting to be missing her. So
Oh,
I just try to
subhanallah.
enjoy her tears. I try to help her with her tantrums. I try to take it all in despite how exhausted I might be. Because I know that one day I'm going to blink and she's not going to be with me anymore. So
Subhanallah.
that's how I personally get through it, by having forward thinking.
You know what? That's a really interesting point because on
Not hindsight,
social
yeah.
media, your algorithm, it knows you.
Yeah.
You get a lot of the parenting content, and actually, there's is a big what do you call it? Motivational speaker. He
Yeah.
speaks on parents and stuff, and he gave an example exactly like what you said.
Really.
Pretty much, he said, whenever your child is testing you, and you are really at the end of your tether, imagine yourself old and imagine yourself that you're older and you have a time machine and that time machine can only bring you back to this moment. How would you act? You wouldn't be that. Imagine you're only able to come back to this moment
Yes.
in particular. You wouldn't be. You'd be so grateful to be
Yes.
revisiting it. So it's very, very similar to what you said, actually, mashallah,
Yeah.
subhanallah. And it is true. It's Allah make it easy for all of us.
I mean,
So yeah, that's definitely a difficult one with the mornings. But that was one tip.
mhm.
Inshallah, it does benefit somebody. So the second one.
Sorry, in relation to that, the first tip of being like how to deal with early mornings, is that what it was as
So
well?
yeah, so it's not how to deal with it, but how to make the most of early mornings. A
Okay.
lot of the time, I know a lot of people have it on their like goal list to want to pray the Hajj, for
Yeah.
example, or make the most of that part of the night. And obviously, generally speaking, you have your normal routine.
Mm.
You go to bed, you wake up for Fajr. It's just you're not awake unless you do something like night shift. You're not awake constantly through the night
Yeah.
unless you have a baby, that keeps you up all night. So it's kind of making good of a bad
So
situation,
what I would say
essentially.
then, this would be really pertinent for expecting mums right now, or people who are wanting to like have
Mhm.
their first child, is try to get yourself used to not necessarily like sleep deprive yourself, but try to make yourself busy and more conducive with throughout your night hours, if that makes sense. So try to get used to having shorter nights and getting your body used to it. So
Ooh,
so
I
you're
think
preparing yourself for when it does happen. You don't feel as exhausted. You're still going to be exhausted, but you're not going to feel it as much. That's something that I wish I did. That's something that inshallah, if I ever have any future children, I will do. Is that I'm not going to get my body too used to sleeping, because I know that I can, Allah will allow me to feel rested when I need to. Because there are some people like who can just sleep and sleep and they'll not feel rested. And there's some people who can feel they'll have so much barakah in their sleep.
Like I was
They'll
thinking
have
there.
4 or 5 hours sleep, and that's enough to keep them running until whenever, because there's so much barakah in their sleep, and
Mm.
that's what we need.
I don't
So,
know, I got different advice.
go on then.
I
I'd
got
like to
that.
hear it.
So logically speaking, I would agree with that. I would
Okay.
think that makes complete sense. Training your body for what's to come.
Yes.
But the advice I got was when you're pregnant,
Just rest.
you just rest and sleep as much as you can because you're not going to get any sleep afterwards. So not just rest because you're pregnant and
Yeah.
obviously you're growing a baby, but also because you're not going to get any later.
Yeah.
So
I
oh,
suppose
you'll have
it's gonna
inshallah.
yeah it's gonna you're gonna make up for it in the later years, I suppose, the lack of sleep that your body
Mm.
has.
Somebody
But
said to me, this is probably a
yeah.
little bit like, obviously it was like tongue in cheek, it was said in jest,
Mm.
but I met a sister that I know through Jumma. I say her at Jumma, Lama Barik, she's a lovely sister. And she saw me when I was pregnant, and then I didn't see her for months and months. And then I saw her out on the street on the way to the supermarket or something. And she's like, oh, you had the baby, and how is it? And the first thing that we say is, oh, the lack of
Yeah.
sleep. And she's like, yeah, yeah. And she's got a few kids, and I'm pretty sure they're quite grown up. And she said, "Oh yeah, the next time you get sleep after you've had a baby is when you're dead." Yes, so that stuck with me. That I'm gonna have to tell her that to stick with me. And I just thought she said it like quite like cheekily and jokingly, but
Oh my
I think she's
gosh.
right because you. I mean, we don't know, but just talking to our mothers, you never really stop worrying about your child.
Yes. But
So
do you know what? This reminds us to follow the sunnah of what the Prophet ﷺ said about when it comes to, for example, praying Isha, is that try to make Isha the last thing you do. I'm
yeah.
paraphrasing here, but try to make Isha the last thing you do.
Hmm.
And then when you pray Fajr, try no matter what time Fajr is, try to stay awake, and because that's where the most barakah is in your time of the day,
Yes. Yeah.
is after Fajr during that period. And obviously, if you need to have like a siesta later, have a nap later on,
That's
like
it.
at noon. But the most barakah in your time is in the morning. So
Yeah.
regardless whether you have a child or not, that's pertinent advice around the clock.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's really good actually. Is that as a mother of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children, how many children you got, to set a good example as well for your children,
Mm.
regardless of whether they go to school or they're homeschooled, whatever routine they've got, is to set that good example and
Mm.
nurture, foster that Islamic environment and setting the example for them. So you're role modeling to them what Islam is through your
Mm.
actions.
Mm.
And they'll realize this. They'll not realize it if you tell them sometimes, even if you tell someone something directly,
Yes.
I'm doing this because Islam says so,
Yeah.
they'll realize actually when they're older, my mother was trying to teach me what Islam was by actually modeling it.
Yeah.
And that is probably the best thing.
100%. And
So,
they'll pick it up more. I hate that attitude. Do as I say, not as I
oh
do.
God.
I hate that. And you know what? You laugh, but it's quite common
Yeah.
with the parents. And for me, I really,
Yeah, it's excellent.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. But yeah, so Zaka, that's an excellent point. I'm gonna speed up
Give it a
because
second.
we've got 5 minutes
Oh, is that
left.
it?
So I had a few other bit tips, but I'm gonna speed through them. This one I think is particularly like important, especially because we were just talking about the cleaning of the house and everything, and remembering that everything that we do is, if we do it with the right intention to please Allah,
Mm,
it's an ibadah, there's a reward in it. So doing the dishes you were saying before, or doing the hoovering or the dusting, or looking after your child, if you do it for the sake of Allah, to please Allah, it becomes an ibadah.
mhm,
um and so having that intention, you've already just changed the game, because everything that you're doing that is just seems mundane and unnecessary in the context of your iman actually becomes a worship,
mm,
becomes a means for you to get reward. So I think that's a nice easy one, to be
yeah.
honest, because we're doing them things anyway. We're changing the nappies and we're feeding the babies and we're tidying up, and so changing your intention, I think, um and having patience with your child, I think, is, I'm going to keep it short because of the time, um is important. So
Mhm.
yeah, anything you want
No,
to add to
that's
that?
it. I mean, we could talk more about that in the
Yeah,
episode about relationships, about how other people can share the burden. But I think for now,
definitely.
that's quite good.
And also, I'm going to fly through these now, inshallah, because we've I knew this would happen. We've run out of time. Dua. You want to say? I'll let you take the lead on this. So just making dua,
Mm,
basically, and making dua to make for Allah to make things easy for you. Another dua I make now, and I ask shamelessly everybody that's listening to make this dua to help my Abdullah sleep better through the night because he's
I
not a good
mean,
sleeper. I mean, and all other
yeah.
mums that are struggling out there with the same problem, Allah make it easy for you as well. So yeah, so I'm gonna wrap up now. We had so much more to say, and inshallah in future shows will be a little bit more streamlined. um
So should we we'll do summary for next at the beginning of next week's episode, but should we cover some comments for now?
we will. I just want to also thank our sponsor, and that's One Nation Childcare. Um So we'd like to thank them for sponsoring
sponsoring
the
the show.
show.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to our comments. Any other comments before we wrap up? Sarah. Oh, they're here. Is there any du'as that could be said when in difficult situations? Yes, there are. Inshallah, we'll post them on the social media. Um,
Can we
keep
post
an
them
eye on
as
them.
like as a special post for this show? So
Okay, we've got
yes.
daily reminders, and then if we've got anything on the show, what I will do is we'll add them in the comments. Ramadan Mubarak, and to you, Allah accept it from us.
I
Any
mean,
other ones? I mean, and I'm glad to be through those days. There will always be a challenge in motherhood where fathers are busy paying their mortgage.
okay. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, Allah reward the fathers as well, because although they may not be as present in the day-to-day care of the child, they do get a lot of stick, and they are
Yeah.
out working, paying for the milk for those that are like not breastfeeding, and all that kind of thing. So Allah reward the fathers as well that are
So can I
supporting the
just say,
mums.
for the last 2 minutes, can we have a little sneak peek of what's to come for next week's
Yes.
episode? So like what are
So
we going to cover next week?
we are well, I was hoping to get, so had Mariam as my guest today. We've got a list of other guests to come, but they're to be confirmed. So depending on that schedule, we'll have we'll know when the shows are, but I can share what the shows are. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, we've done how to maintain your spiritual health and your Iman. We're going to, one episode, perhaps next week, will be how to maintain your physical health after having a newborn. And hopefully, we've got a few doctors lined up, sisters that are in the medical field that can hopefully guest along with us and help with that. We're going to have somebody from potentially from Mind, a therapist from Mind, talking about postpartum depression and just the baby blues and the anxieties around having a newborn. And then there's 4 shows altogether, isn't there? There's 4 Mondays in this month. The last show will be about relationships. So as I said before, your relation, how to maintain your relationship with your spouse, with your families, with your in-laws, uh, and how to build that tribe essentially, and in the community as well. So those are the shows to come, inshallah. Um, so
I think
looking
it's
forward to
five
them.
Mondays.
Is the 5 other 5 Mondays?
So we can have it like
Because
a
we could either do a roundup show, or I did have another show, and I can't remember from the top of my head what it was.
we'll have a bonus show.
Well, I did have an idea. It's actually worked out well. Oh, I think it was going to be self care. Just well, we talk about self care in the spiritual sense today, and then the physical and the mental, but just other things around self care, perhaps.
Mhm.
Maybe do that, or we'll just do a roundup show. But
Mhm.
I think we'll do a roundup show. Maybe we'll discuss that. I thought it was 4 Mondays. That's good to know. That's
You
why we'll
sit corrected.
yeah, Jazakallah khair. Okay, so thanks again to our sponsor, One Nation. And as you're listening to Stream Islam on all IDC platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, um, watch out for our schedule. We've got some other fantastic shows. Me and Mariam will be back next week, inshallah. And yeah, any final words? Other than Jazakallah khair for Sarah for producing and for Mariam for
No, that's
being
it.
my guest
You said it
today.
all.
Okay,
Thank you.
inshallah. I hope everybody has a lovely iftar and Allah accept this Ramadan from us.
I mean.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.